It is Friday, October 1st. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, welcome back. This past week we had a good amount of stuff happening, right? Last week was kind of slow, but this one we've got rumors and also official PlayStation-related announcements, so let's start off as always with first our PS Plus reminder. Grab the September games before they go away, October 5th. The new lineup will be hell loose on PS5, and then for PS4, PGA Tour 2K21 is what it's called. I want to say Tiger Woods. And then Mortal Kombat 10. Now, it's alright. You want to try Hell Loose for sure. That one is worth checking out if you're on PS5, if you have a PS5. However, PlayStation Asia got the much better deal here where they got those games, including Castlevania Requiem, and I would have liked that for sure. It's got Symphony of the Night in there, so that would have been great. But this it's an okay month for sure. It's weird how sometimes these regional variances, games are removed, or sometimes there's an extra one in there. It happens almost every month, actually, and this one is, the divide there is pretty clear. It would have been nice to have that one. Now, getting into our first news story, the Senior Vice President of Platform Experiences at PlayStation, Hideaki Nishino, was discussing on the PlayStation blog, talking about the recent PS5 system software update, and there's really not anything that noteworthy in there. It's kind of a fluff piece, but he does say one thing, and I quote, "We learned a lot through PS4 and continue to learn about how players are using the system and how games are behaving. We know what is most accepted and most popular, what features are not used, so we had a gigantic list of things before PS5 launched that we wanted to do. Actually, we dreamed of doing everything." He goes on to say there's more things that they want to touch on throughout PS5, certain ideas and features. It's a list that they want to get to, and that's one thing that a lot of people are still clamoring for as well, features X, Y, and Z, right? Whether it's folders, variable rate refresh, which that would be great to have, 1440p support, which I don't think that one's going to come anytime soon. Maybe they'll do it a few years down the line, but I feel like that's maybe not a high priority, especially when the context here is that they look at what people are using and not using. So I imagine, PlayStation's being plugged into monitors is not a frequent occurrence across all users, and that also explains why certain aspects of PS4 are not present on PS5, or at least not on day one. There is a priority level with certain features. So hopefully over time PS5 will get much better, which I think for year one at least, that last update was a really big one and a lot of meaningful stuff in there that helps the just general quality of life using the console day in and day out. Next up, if you remember last week, we talked about how The Last of Us Day was on Sunday, and it was kind of like, all right, well, let's see if anything happens that day. And it actually kind of did. They acknowledged what everybody wanted to hear. We didn't get a major update here, but over on the Naughty Dog website, we did get a blog post from Rochelle Snyder at Naughty Dog where they say, and I quote, quoting fans basically, "Yeah, that's lovely and great, Naughty Dog, but what are you doing with The Last of Us right now? In short, we're working on it." That's a link to the original 2019 tweet where they had to cut out multiplayer from The Last of Us Part 2. "We see the community comments as many of you clamor for multiplayer and want updates. For now, we'll say that we love what the team is developing and want to give them time to build out their ambitious project. We'll reveal more when it's ready." Now, that's actually good to hear. At a minimum, that's what we were looking for, is just some sort of acknowledgement or update, and that's what we got. And it's not really a surprising update. It's a matter of like, yeah, we're not done, we're still working on it, you're just going to have to be patient, and that's fine. Remember, 6 months, the past 6 months we've been looking at these job listings. It seems clear that it's not close to being ready. Based off the positions that they're hiring for, standalone, it got much bigger than it was originally envisioned as. In typical Naughty Dog fashion, it seems like the formal reveal is probably going to be, as a shot in the dark, maybe like mid-2022 would be a good guess, maybe sooner than that, but it does sound like they need a lot more time, and it's not nearly as close to being done as we otherwise maybe thought last year. Now, we did get one little cool thing, which is our first official still from The Last of Us HBO TV series starring Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal as Joel and Ellie, and it looks pretty good. Actually really convincing when you see them staring off into that grassy hillside and they're in full costume. It looks good, actually. Very convincing. I would like to see more, but that's far away. We still have a long time to go. And I say official because we've actually had a lot of like shots leak out. Not even like leak, but people just showing up on set. And where are they filming again? Calgary, Canada? So, people just taking candid shots and throwing them up on Twitter or something. So it's kind of out of context. You're only seeing shots of what's going on set, but this is the one that they put out as a tease for The Last of Us Day on the 26th. And it's a small tease, but one that was certainly nice for the occasion. Moving on to our next news story, as reported by GamesIndustry.biz, PS5 has officially crossed over 1 million consoles sold in the UK, which is about 3 weeks faster than PS4, so 39 weeks total. And when launch aligned with PS4, turns out back in July it was a little bit behind PS4. However, we've seen a lot of drops lately, not just in the UK, but everywhere it seems. So like we said this last week, but here in North America, like GameStop had some, Best Buy, PS Direct had like 4 or 5 different queues throughout the week, some requiring the email invite, but some didn't require it. So a lot of opportunities lately to buy a PS5, which is always nice, but this news story doesn't really ever change when it comes to PS5 sales or PS5 stock. It's in demand, it sells out, it keeps selling out, and the result is that they are still, in fact, making more of these versus PS4, as evident by it beating PS4 sales time and time again, or at least PS4 sales at the rate of PS4 sale. For our next story, it looks like we might have an update here on what's going on with this Twisted Metal reboot revival rumor, and we've had a lot of things come up lately about this, so it sounds like the wheels are definitely in motion here. The recent report is coming from Andy Robinson of Video Games Chronicle, where we might know who's working on it, and that's Lucid Games. So the report states that somebody who's aware of what's going on at Lucid says that they started early development of a free-to-play Twisted Metal game, and it will be a free-to-play revival take on the franchise, essentially. The free-to-play being because of how Destruction All-Stars initially did on PS Plus versus being available as a $70 retail release. And I would gather that's where most of the downloads and engagement came from, is being available on Plus. I highly doubt people are paying $20 to play it nowadays, but that is the decision there. And I think the one problem initially that a lot of people would have with this news is that, well, you know, Destruction All-Stars wasn't really received all that well, and not to sugarcoat it, but it's like, it didn't work out so well. It's not really a successful game by any stretch. Yeah, it's still ongoing. They're on Season 1. They have a content roadmap, but that's really a different discussion. Just inherently, the game did not land. So why would PlayStation give them the keys to this franchise? Well, the report also acknowledges this by stating that PlayStation was able to look past this because of the pedigree of this developer. When you look at what they've done previously, not only have they worked on the Need for Speed franchise, they did the Hot Pursuit remaster, they did a different car combat game, but just the talent beyond Lucid stretches back to, like, they have roots making the Project Gotham racing games. And even for Destruction All-Stars, it's not a poorly made game by any stretch. It actually looks nice, it feels nice, it's polished, it's got a great presentation, it actually feels great to play, but it's just, I think it's really the gameplay loop where it falls apart. Inherently, what the game is trying to do is where it didn't really resonate with people, and so I guess PlayStation was able to see past that and go, well, if we give you a basic framework and an existing franchise, and you know what to do from the very onset, you should be able to handle it no problem. And that is actually exactly how I see it. This wasn't really alarming to me when I saw this story. I'm like, yeah, actually, I think they could do it. Because there's a basic, the groundwork's already laid out. You know what to do. Make another Twisted Metal game, but obviously they're going to have their own flavor to it, and it's going to be a completely new revival, reboot, take on the Twisted Metal franchise, so there is some expectations about it being different from previous entries, but we haven't had a Twisted Metal game in 10 years, and the last one, that didn't really work out for a lot of people or a lot of close fans, so I think this is something that you should be cautiously optimistic for if it is in fact Lucid. I think they could do it. It really is a matter of, like, Destruction All-Stars, it just, what it was trying to accomplish, that is what didn't work. And, you know, like, for me, that game wasn't even, it's not bad. It's like maybe a 6 out of 10. That's how I see it. And that's fine if it's like maybe a single player game and it's on sale or it's part of PS Plus. But if we're talking about a free-to-play multiplayer game, that's not good enough. You got to be like an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10 to find an audience and sustain itself. So hopefully that's what we see. And for Twisted Metal being available as a free-to-play game, I think that's the best shot of it, finding success and finding an audience today. I'm not sure if it's fair to call it like a niche genre in today's, you know, landscape of like the flavor that's going on with certain genres and what's popular with the mainstream audience. You know, something like Rocket League still did really well, Fall Guys. I mean, there's a lot of cool creative ideas out there, Among Us. So it could do well, and that's where I'm hopeful that this will work out, but we won't see this until, 2023, probably next to the TV show. So it'll be a while until we see it, but there is definitely some movement going on with Twisted Metal, and I'm excited to see it return in a big way. Next up, we have yet another minor piece of news when it comes to Spider-Man 2, much like we heard about with Wolverine, where that's going to be a darker, mature tone. Sounds like that might be kind of what's going on with Spider-Man as well. So recently on the This Week in Marvel podcast, they had on the Marvel Games creative vice president, Bill Roseman, where he said, and I quote, if the first Spider-Man game was Star Wars, Spider-Man 2 is kind of our empire. It gets a little darker. And that's really it. Not much else was said. If anything, he does point out to rewatch the trailers and teasers to catch any Easter eggs that they put in there, which for Wolverine, at least, a lot of people already uncovered those, like the direct references to the Incredible Hulk number 181, which is the first appearance of Wolverine. But hearing about Spider-Man 2 maybe being a bit darker, that's weird, because I felt like the first game was already kind of dark in the context of Spider-Man as a character. Right now, I'm not sure how dark Spider-Man really gets across, all disciplines of where, stories are told in the Spider-Man universe, right? I'm sure it gets really dark, but when you just compare the games, you kind of assume okay, Wolverine, dark, mature tone makes sense. That's an expectation out of that character. But the first game, and even Miles Morales, had a lot of, themes and story beats that got me kind of teary-eyed in certain situations. I'm wow, I can't believe they're doing this in this game. So hearing it go darker, all right, I'm picking up what they're laying down. It's Insomniac. I can, I'm excited, but we're still far away. We're getting these tiny pieces of info here and there, and it seems like we're going to get a lot of that until our next official trailer. Moving on to our next set of news stories here, we've got two acquisitions, the first one being Fabrik Games. Fabrik Games has been acquired by developer Firesprite, which developer Firesprite was acquired last month, and by association of parent company, that would mean PlayStation acquired Fabrik. But this is really more a matter of Firesprite folding in Fabrik, because there is a pretty close association there already. So not only was Fabrik founded by a former Firesprite, I think the co-founder actually, and I'm not sure if the whole team is comprised of former Firesprite devs, but Firesprite was founded in 2012, Fabrik in 2014. They don't really have a deep portfolio there. They've got two small-scale games that shipped on PlayStation and Steam, and also Oculus, and then they also helped facilitate the multiple versions of the Persistence, the 2D version on PS4, X1, Steam, and also, no, I think they did do the virtual reality version for that as well, but it was all the same, right? So they're now folded in based on proximity too. They're in Manchester, if I didn't say that already. So it seems like that just made a lot of sense, and acquisitions don't happen overnight, so I would imagine all of this was kind of in motion regarding PlayStation acquiring Firesprite and Firesprite folding in Fabrik Games. But now Firesprite now has gone from 250 employees to 265, so the studio is it's already getting bigger. I know it's hard to get excited about what is, a relatively unknown developer that went really under the radar for a lot of people. But keep in mind, they've got a huge staff and multiple projects. One, a dark narrative game, possibly a Horizon VR spin-off, if that's still in the loop. Also, maybe a multiplayer game. I know there's nothing to really look back and reference to get excited, but clearly PlayStation saw something there behind the scenes when it comes to a vertical slice and what they're actively working towards, and now they've got the proper resources and funding. So absolutely, this should be a developer that you should keep your eyes on. Now, as for the other acquisition, in a complete surprise and utter shock to no one at all, it is confirmed Bluepoint Games has joined PlayStation Studios, and we knew that from PlayStation Japan tweeting out that image by mistake during the Housemarque acquisition, and it was very clearly meant for an acquisition announcement. It was hard to argue against how that image was made. It was more a matter of when will this get announced, and I know a lot of people were expecting the PS showcase. Probably worth mentioning that when it comes to business-related announcements like this, they don't really do that at live streams anymore. State of Play, a PS showcase, or even when they were at E3, they haven't done that in a long time. So maybe service stuff like PS Plus, but not business stuff. So that would always be the PS blog, Twitter, or a standard press release. But anyway, what's funny about the whole thing is that they didn't even use that original image. So this time Bluepoint got their own little special video about 1.5 minutes long actually announcing the acquisition. So there it is. It's finally out there. And what we did learn, so to actually unpack the details here, Bluepoint, their next game is not going to be a remake. It's a new original piece of content, and that is the wording there, which we'll touch on in a second here. But in a conversation with IGN, both the head of PlayStation Studios, Herman Hulst, and the president of Bluepoint Games, Marco Thrush, were discussing the deal. And for Marco Thrush, talking about their next game and how it's not a remake, he says, and I quote, "Our team is a very highly experienced team. The average experience among most people is about 15 years, and all of them come from original development. It's not like we're a bunch of developers that got trained up on making remasters and remakes. We have that original game development mindset in our hearts, and that's what we're now finally ready with the support of Sony to push forward and show what we can do and show what PlayStation can do." As for Herman Hulst on the acquisition and acquisitions moving forward, he says, and I quote, "We are open always to building new relationships or bringing people in-house, but only if we adhere to the quality-first mentality and the right kind of innovative content, new experiences, diverse experiences, because all of these teams, they share a lot, but they're also very different from one another, and that's what I really like. And I think that's what the PlayStation audience, the PlayStation fans deserve. It's that diverse slate of games coming out of PlayStation Studios." The way we look at our group of studios, and we now have 16 internal teams as part of PlayStation Studios, is very much the way we look at our games. It needs to be right, it needs to fit what we're about in qualitative terms, it's got to be the right games. Same with the teams. The teams have to have a very collaborative mindset. They need to be quality oriented. We're not buying teams just to get bigger. We're only buying teams because we feel that together we're going to make something that is going to be even better than if we did it separate from one another. So let's unpack this one. We've got original development at Bluepoint Games, which I find is careful wording. They don't explicitly say it's a new IP, which if it was, they probably would have said that like any other circumstance, but maybe this implies that they're doing a sequel to an existing franchise instead, or maybe DLC. That's just, if they were going to do a new IP, they probably would have put that out there. If they're comfortable with saying that they're doing new content in the first place, it probably would have been that. Doesn't rule out a new IP, but just an observation. However, I would have been totally fine with Bluepoint joining PS Studios as, a developer that works on the back catalog of classic PlayStation games, modernizing them and giving them that Demon's Souls treatment, which was their finest remake up to this point. And the evolution is there. They did standard port jobs, and then a bunch of good remaster collections, and then a great remake with Shadow of the Colossus, and then a fantastic remake with Demon's Souls. But the evolution is also there to go and eventually do your own, brand new thing, which Sony is going to be allowing them to do, which is also fine. I mean, the thing is, you can't really be upset with a talented group of people making something brand new, and at least with Bluepoint, where you have no frame of reference of what they could come up with or make, that's where it's like, okay, well, even if they do an existing franchise or something brand new, it will be interesting to see their spin on that, because clearly they're a very capable team, and they're only, there's only upside from here really when it comes to their prospects of what they're able to accomplish, and now possibly more with the resources and funding and security of being under the PlayStation umbrella. Now, as for the acquisition itself, pretty straightforward, I think, right? Even before the leak, it was like, yeah, this should happen because they fit the criteria so well for Sony, where they're a long-standing partner. They were contracted out multiple times, and each time they delivered on those occasions. That's how Sony evaluates possibly acquiring a studio. They've done this time and time again, and I don't know how this concept is getting lost on people. Yes, they've made a lot of acquisitions this year alone, and in fact, the most that they've done in one single year, but each one of them still fits what they've, what they're looking for, essentially. Firesprite a little bit under the radar, and Nixes maybe a little bit more of like the odd man out, because that's largely going to be PC stuff, and that's something that Sony's doing nowadays. But for the past 15 plus years, you can look at each acquisition. It's almost always they have a portfolio of like 60 to 80% PlayStation stuff. You can always find like a multi-platform release in there somewhere, or maybe some like mobile stuff, but time and time again, it's a long-standing partner. I think this is still just largely coming from like the audience that follows Xbox stuff and how Microsoft has done their acquisitions for the past 3 years. They are picking up teams that have a history of doing third-party games, and that's inherently why it's been controversial. You've got teams that have been doing either they self-publish on all platforms, or they work with a big major third-party publisher, or in the case of Bethesda, they are their own publisher. And yeah, they might have a closer relationship to Microsoft, but still, they were publishing games everywhere, even Nintendo when it calls for it. So I find that the expectation around how this stuff works is it's changed with Microsoft doing all this stuff in 3 years, particularly if you follow, you know, the Xbox camp, and it's like a lot of it's, oh, Microsoft should pick up X, Y, and Z because they can and they should. And when you translate that to PlayStation, it doesn't fit because that's not how they go about doing it. Why are we humoring Square Enix as a major publisher or Arc System Works? Like, that's just not how they've gone about doing it. I would be shocked if they did either of those acquisitions or one that doesn't really fit their defined formula for how they've been doing it. Yeah, they're still interested, but it's a matter of like how, you know, where do they go from here? Because Bluepoint was, I think, the most obvious one that was really left. Maybe more under the radar stuff like Firesprite, where maybe we're looking at more short-term partnerships where maybe they've only done like 1 or 2 games and maybe contract work that you're not immediately aware of. So maybe Arrowhead Games, where they did Helldivers and I think 1 or 2 other PS Vita games. They don't have a deep portfolio. Lucid Games did a lot of like mobile stuff in 1 PS Vita game, and now of course they're doing, they did Destruction All-Stars, maybe Twisted Metal, so that's going to be mostly PlayStation stuff if you kind of don't really care about mobile games. Camouflage, they did Iron Man VR and 1 other game, so maybe those would fit, but also we have to remember they can still like form a brand new studio. When we say, or when PlayStation says organic growth, that would mean a brand new studio or forming new teams inside existing studios, or at least that's how I would define it. So they could do that too. But moving forward, we do have a rumor off the back of this official Bluepoint acquisition, which is, it's a rare circumstance where we have a Twitter account that actually called stuff out in a correct fashion. So we've got Millie A video game analyst, where recently people finally noticed this account. And to give you context, they've been very accurate regarding the PlayStation Showcase. So back in July and August, they were tweeting out the event was coming. They put out an exact date. They also tweeted about what's going to be in the show, and this was all prior to it, of course. They said PSVR was going to be there, the next-gen version, and they even clarified, again, before the event, that the assets weren't ready. The runtime for the show was going to be 60 minutes. With the VR stuff removed, it's now 40 minutes, so this is all very accurate. Also one for Wolverine, which nobody saw coming, so the new rumor that they recently tweeted out for Bluepoint is that they are actually working on 2 projects. An original game that is a similar size to Insomniac's Miles Morales. I would love that, actually, and that might explain the size of Bluepoint, because they've only got about 75 or 90 employees. It's big, but not massive. And also a remake of a beloved game, so they might actually still be doing remakes. And they did clarify, sorry all, 100% not Metal Gear. She does say that something's coming for Metal Gear, but she doesn't even say it's a remake. It could be just a brand new entry in the franchise with a completely different developer, so not a remake, no Sony involvement, not Bluepoint. Maybe we can lay that one to rest. But if that's how Bluepoint is going to be approached moving forward, and that's how they grow into 2 teams that can handle new stuff alongside remakes, I think that's the best of both worlds, actually. So if that is the case, sign me up. I think it would actually be... Yeah, they want to do new stuff. I do think it would be a shame if they didn't do remakes anymore, because they're just so good at it. And I think it actually is needed for some of these games that are stuck on, say, PS2, PS1, and they're really rough to go back to. Bring them up to a modern audience. It was just so great what they've been doing with these older franchises, and I would hate to see that go away. Anyway, moving on to our next news story, IGN recently ran a Best Games of All Time competition where they put all these well-known titles against each other in brackets, and over the course of a few weeks, they did a lot of voting across these various social media channels, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, I think Facebook too, hundreds of thousands of votes, and the result is in for the best game of all time. It's the 2018 God of War. It beat Grand Theft Auto 5 in the finale roundup. Interesting. It's funny about any conversation about the best game of all time, or even a top 5, a top 10, even a top 100. It's just, all it does is create a ton of noise about why the list or the choice is wrong. Even God of War 2018, it's an excellent game, but you could very easily argue for so many other things in there. Still, it's a good reward to have. Obviously, they're quite humbled. Sony Santa Monica is pleased. They're thankful. It's just there is some questionable matchups in there. I think Half-Life 2 lost to like a what was it, Rise of the Tomb Raider? It's like, I think there's a lot of recency bias in there. I don't know if it's because like IGN's like core audience is, it probably skews younger, I would guess. I don't have their metrics on hand, but maybe that would explain why, you know, something like GTA 5 and God of War ranked up so high versus some of these other beloved classics. But again, I think you could easily argue for all the old games, and even newer ones too. They certainly hold up just as well as anything else. So I don't know. That's why I never really like just saying something is the best, because how could you say that, right? So congratulations, God of War. Really, this is just a good segue to our next story, which is about God of War Ragnarok's delay into 2022. It turns out that might not have been due to like just development, although I'm sure that still plays a role to a degree here. We found out that the voice actor for Kratos, Christopher Judge, recently put out a string of tweets where he reveals he was the reason behind the delay. He says, and I quote, "In my feels right now, I need to be forthcoming. This has been approved by no one. To the beloved fandom, Ragnarok was delayed because of me. August 2019, I couldn't walk. Had to have back surgery, both hips replaced, and knee surgery. They waited for me to rehab. No threats, no who do you think you are, nothing but love and support, and Sony Santa Monica has never said a word about the delay and what caused it. Studios are assholes, but this studio from top to bottom should give us hope. What they did for the crew is way more. That I can't talk about, but I've said to all involved, it's not the classiest thing that I've ever heard about in this business. Everyone involved in God of War franchise puts their hearts and souls in every frame you see. I want to thank everyone that's allowed me to play and laugh and love and cry without judgment, but with unconditional support and love in this thing of all of ours." That is really heartwarming to hear, actually, that they were able to accommodate for what must have been a really traumatic time for him, right? I mean, I couldn't even imagine what he probably went through. You know, not being able to walk, surgery, rehab, physical therapy, just it's going to be a massive toll on you. Of course, physically, but also mentally, having to think about, you know, what about work, or trying to get better so you can go back to work, or whatever his circumstance was, it's not going to be easy. So it's great to see that they were actually able to work around him and say, you know, it's fine. We can, you know, hold off on this project. On the flip side, it's also maybe more eye-opening about that 2021 targeted release date. Maybe they really thought this game could have shipped on time had this not happened. Not that that's like a major deal or, you know, crux of the issue, right? Like that's, for given the circumstance, this was absolutely the right call, but maybe they actually did get a lot more work done than we thought. Although a part of me still thinks that the extra breathing room is going to be, would have maybe been needed anyway. It was hard to believe the 2021 release year, but whatever the case may be, it's just, this was a great outcome to hear about. Next up, we have a new Sony patent that was recently discovered, and it was published on September 9th, so it hasn't been out too long, but this is a relatively new patent, and it describes, well, the title of it is Ultra High Speed Low Latency Network Storage. It describes using a bunch of, multiple SSDs, NVMe SSDs, to deliver the same content to one particular user, and I guess the failsafe here is that they can deliver different parts of the game to possibly account for one SSD either dying, or maybe they're working in succession of each other to seamlessly deliver a low latency experience, but inherently, because it's SSDs, it might imply that Sony is gearing up for some sort of answer to put PlayStation 5s in a specialized server rack to deliver PS5 games on PS Now. Because the thing is, with PS Now, they don't use regular retail consoles, they use specialized server blades. So as an example, for PS3, they have, it's just one board, and there's 6 PS3 SoCs on it, so it's acting as 6 separate PlayStation 3s, and they have a bunch of those all preloaded with different games, so you can access them immediately. They also have that like specialized miniature XMB, so you can, you know, upload and save data or access the friends list. Same for PlayStation 4, and this would be a natural evolution for PlayStation 5 is coming up with a server blade that in theory should also be able to replace the PS4 ones, because PS5s are backwards compatible. So if it's principally going to be, you know, like the standard, you know, PS5 operating system and the PS5 SoC, then that is how it should work, and I would imagine that's how they're going to approach it. More a matter of when. Sooner would be better, of course, but if they can come up with some way to actually access PS5 games on PS Now, and that would be a huge value proposition to the service, well, that would be great. Is this patent the answer? I don't know. It certainly sounds like an attempt at trying to figure that out, and whenever it happens, I would hope that they're forthcoming with explaining how they went about doing it. Moving on to our next news story, as part of another report coming out of Video Games Chronicle, it looks like we might have some kind of Horizon co-op multiplayer mode or spin-off or sequel or something like that. So initially this report cites a job listing on Guerrilla's main website where they're looking for a senior social systems designer position where they're supposed to engage with players in social interactions to create lasting relationships. And the listing says you will also work with a core team of multiple designers focused on social systems and player engagements. And there's also a listing for a senior game writer, which they're seeking somebody with extensive knowledge of stories and narrative design in open world RPG games, online games, and MMORPGs. Now, VGC does point out that they've had a source telling them that Horizon was supposed to have some sort of multiplayer mode or co-op mode, and that it was supposed to also possibly get moved into the sequel Forbidden West, which we know that's not the case right now, at least. And I remember this rumor actually coming up for Zero Dawn. This is not the first time this has sprang up. I don't remember when this was, either before Zero Dawn when it came out or maybe shortly after it came out, but the game was definitely supposed to have some sort of co-op mode that they wanted to do, but that was scrapped, and it seems like that was also the case for Forbidden West. But VGC is reporting that Sony still wants to do this, I guess, at some point. It's unclear as to where they want to place this now. It could be either a standalone online spin-off or possibly Horizon 3, if that makes sense. But it seems like progress will likely carry over to the next game, and that's what Video Games Chronicle was told. I could see this also maybe being something where it's like Ghost of Tsushima Legends, where it just kind of comes out of nowhere as a free update, and then is also sold separately without having to buy the main game. That could be one way to do it. Remember, Guerrilla still had, they hired Simon LaRouche in 2018 to work on an unannounced project, which may or may not be what this is, although that's, we consider that like FPS talent, like possibly we've got them working on a second game, which is going back to Guerrilla's roots of doing a first-person shooter, which I suspected maybe it's like a new IP. I don't see them going back to Killzone, but perhaps that's maybe what he's doing there. It's all up in the air, but it seems like the interest is definitely there to do some sort of, online Horizon mode of some kind or a separate game, which definitely fits the criteria that Sony has been trying to do more multiplayer stuff. And it's not like you'd get less Horizon, you're just getting Horizon alongside maybe a possible online mode or separate online experience. Next up, the Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO Jim Ryan will be speaking next week, October 7th, at GI Live London, where he'll be speaking with GamesIndustry.biz, having kind of a fireside chat about his time with the company, what he thinks of the brand and where it might be in the future, things like that. It's a ticketed event, unfortunately, so you can't watch it right away as far as I'm aware, but it should be available shortly after, or at the very least we'll have some publications posting stories about what was said, so we should be finding some pretty interesting quotes in there and things that maybe we didn't know about prior. Not major news, of course, it's more of a candid conversation, but still we should find out some pretty noteworthy things. Also, Jade Raymond will be there as well, and she'll presumably talk about her new studio and how PlayStation kind of stepped in to help facilitate starting that brand new team from the ground up, so that will probably be interesting to hear. So we should have a lot of cool stuff coming out of GI Live Monday when the show kicks off October 7th, but it's going to be a 3-day event, I believe. A lot of other big developers will be there, so there should be some cool stuff coming out of that show. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you'd like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories that I want to talk about with you all from this past week. Our Tuesday video was about PS3 games that should get some kind of PS3 port, collection, remake, whatever. It's just, I love PS3, but a lot of games are stuck there. It'd be nice to have some way to play them outside of PS3 or RPCS3, so go check out that kind of curated list. And then coming up, the video I was talking about before, it's taking a long time. There's a lot of roadblocks. I am going to have to delay it for now, but there's a lot of other exciting things coming up that people have been asking for, so that should be coming Maybe in the next month or so, we'll see. But for now, that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.